Welcome to the Extra Medium channel. To catch you up, I started with a 90s Triumph frame, added an old Ninja 250 motor, a dab of custom parts in Kevlar, hollowed out the tank as the shell, rewired everything, built a subframe and tailpiece from scratch, fabricated all kinds of parts, modified some Ninja 250 bodywork to fit, bolted it all together, went to the track, got my racing license from Legion, and got left in the dust by 300s, which brings me to this. This is a Ninja 250 motor from 2009 with a 265cc 13.5 to 1 compression big bore kit. Now before I go sticking this in the race bike, I do want to take care of some of the safety wiring on the hard to reach places. This coolant hose is one of the places. Another place is at the bottom where the coolant goes into the water pump and is retained by one bolt. That bolt needs to be safety wired. Now it's time to get the old motor out and get the new motor in. I've already gotten a few things off of here like the airbox and the battery, so I'll just put it on time lapse and let you watch me take it out. One of the first things that I did with the motor was drain the oil and the coolant or water from the engine. It makes everything so much nicer when you're disassembling. Now the third thing I'm doing here is removing the carburetors, which also have a fluid, which is gasoline. So I drain that out, and then I get to work on the 3 mounting bolts. So I don't have to take all of the brackets out, I just have to take the bolts out that go through the motor. Now this custom exhaust, made by, pretty sure a well-known fabricator with amazing welding skills, comes off. And then the chain, because that's hooked onto the sprocket, which is on the motor. So all my spacers on the motor mounts, I'm going to put a little tape around them so that they kind of stay in the same position, in the same order at least, while I undo all of these bolts and I'll push them out. I don't want the spacers and washers falling all over the place and then have to figure out how to restack them again in the proper order and the proper place. So that's an easy way to do it. So honestly, it was a little bit of a struggle getting this one back in. Having the mounts already there, not having to measure anything, I actually had to put it in the right spot to begin with. So got it all in and the bolts through, and you can see these quality machined spacers that I have, or washer. They fit pretty tightly, so everything's a snug fit. All of the rear mounts work just fine because they're exactly the same as the old motor. Now the front mount is a different one because the head on the 2008 is different than the 1987 to 2007 series. So I will have to make some new motor mounts for the front. And this is going to be pretty easy. I'm just going to grab a couple pieces of aluminum, actually one piece of aluminum, put it on that side, mark where my holes need to be, just given the distance between the hole in the head and the hole in the frame. So there we go, piece of cake. A couple drilled holes, and I put a hole in the middle with some threads in it. I want to mount a bracket on there. There are those. Mounting this up, lines right up pretty easily. So on the other side, it is a little bit offset compared to the old. So I'm going to use steel here, and I'm going to make it offset with some supporting structure, both torsionally and horizontally. So a couple of pieces of metal going both directions offset that mount nicely. And as usual, due to popular demand, here's a picture of my welds. So I'm going to show you this little trick when you want to zip tie some wires or something, but you don't want them to zip tied directly next to another thing. You want them kind of spaced apart like that. So take your little piece of hose like this. I usually use the same hose that I bleed my brakes with. That's usually a good one, but this one's red so you can see it well. So you take your hose and a zip tie. If I can get a hose and a zip tie. And you feed your zip tie through and around and back in. This goes around one piece, and the zip goes around the other. And it holds them separate. Holds them together, but far enough apart that there's no interference for things like electrical lines on, hooked onto something steel, whatever. If you need two things hooked together but separately, there's your trick. We'll put these to use right now. There you go. So with the motor in, I went ahead and changed to some bigger main jets and stuck the carburetors back in. So I like to add something into the oil for the first run and startup, just to break it in with zinc in it. So I'll add down. Okay, choke on first. So I was really stoked that it started. I only had 7 hours until I had to leave for the track for my first race. After a heat cycle, I went ahead and pulled out the old oil to get all the engine lube and everything out, and to put in some good oil. And to help put all that power to the ground, I've gotten Kevlar clutches and heavy duty Barnett springs. And go. So if you notice, I did this after I took out the oil that had the lube and everything in it. Now, since I've covered how to change a clutch on a Ninja 250 in the past, go check out that video. I'll leave a link in the description. So I just thought it would be fun to time myself and maybe just leave the video running the whole time. Problem was I got interrupted by some vendors, some deliveries, some guys to hear for the trees, just all sorts of stuff just got in my way. So I went back and reviewed my footage. I cut out most of the boring parts for y'all, but it did take me 12 minutes and 53 seconds to change the entirety of this clutch, from bolts in to bolts out on the case cover. So there's that. I don't have the whole thing for you, but you'll just have to trust me on that one. Now you'll notice that I'm marking on the clutch and on the basket just to make sure that I line it back up in the proper place. I know that this clutch actually grabs, so unsure if the 2008 through 2012 had the same particular offset that the pre-gen does, which it doesn't, I don't believe. But I just wanted to mark that way I didn't have to look for a little dot or anything. So I marked that up, pulled all the old clutches out, and since I had my new Kevlar clutches sitting in the oil for so long, they were just ready to go in. So everything back in, and then the basket is all together, and my heavy-duty Barnett springs. These will be fantastic, this little foreshadowing. They really help hold the clutches together and keep from slipping. Not that I'm putting down a ton of power, but it's good to make sure that every shift ends in a positive engagement of the clutch, exactly when I want it to. Now with all the important stuff out of the way, I can get to the fun things. So at this point I only have about 4.5 hours left before I have to leave, so I'm working through the night. I wanted to make sure that I got an exhaust on there that would allow the engine to breathe. The stock exhaust on a Ninja 250 actually slips inside, like in the inner diameter of the exhaust port, so it's undersized by far. This is all stainless steel tubing. I gave it a shot with the TIG welder, and guess what? It all held together, so that's pretty good. So another thing you'll notice is I just dumped this out the side instead of running it all the way up the back. This saved me about 3 pounds. So everything is bolted back together and got my race numbers on, and I'm gonna load it up on the trailer because I'm leaving in about 37 minutes from this point. I have a date, and it's at the track, and it's for a race, the first round of Legion Superbike. Legion is a great organization with whom I got my racing license, so more videos on that race to come. But for now, hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back and check out how we did in the first race.